Morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Just thought I'll share my thoughts with you. I've been dabbling with multifocals for last over 10 years now. Until about 2 or 3 years ago, I never had the courage to even advise a patient coming following LASIK and advise him with multifocal lens implantation. Till about 3 years ago, I thought maybe it's time that I consider now, because there have been so many innovations in the lens designs which have minimized the possibility of night vision problems. As we all know, most of these laser vision correction patients have difficulties with contrast, with night vision problems. And if you are using a lens, a multifocal lens, which adds on to the problem, it doesn't serve the purpose. So I started doing monofocal lens implantations, and I would spend hours together trying to calculate the right kind of lens power, because following laser vision correction, everything changes on the cornea. As you know, from a prolate, it becomes oblate. You are changing the ratio of the anterior and the posterior curvature, and that makes it very difficult for conventional keratometers to estimate the right keratometry power, and that affects your intraocular lens implant calculations. And we know that when we do keratometry in these patients, the corneal power is always overestimated, whether you use manual or auto keratometers. So there's nothing different with your phacoemulsification technique when you do multifocals or phaco in these patients. But the important thing is the counseling of the patient. You need to spend a lot more time with these patients, trying to explain to them that they should not expect the same kind of result that they expected following LASIK or laser vision correction. The fact that they went for laser vision correction tells you that they have very demanding mindsets. They expect a lot more than a conventional patient. So you need to dampen down their expectations. And typically, I would tell them that there is a 10% chance that they may need a touch-up or an additional procedure. It's always better to under-promise and over-deliver. The patient is a lot more happy if they were not expecting much, but they ended up with a great result. And the main problem that we have with these situations is that the cornea is not normal. They may have an ocular surface disease, and if they have poor quality of vision with mesopic illumination, low contrast sensitivity, you are adding on multifocal lens implant, as you know, which divides the light into near focus, distance focus, and again causes problem with contrast sensitivity. You are creating more problems for these patients. So if you explain it to them properly that they should not expect a lot more than what they had, then usually they are fairly satisfied. And of course, when they had their laser vision correction, they were relatively younger. Over a period of years now, they may have developed maculopathy, age-related maculopathy. They may have developed corneal changes. They may have developed other conditions like ocular hypertension or glaucoma. So you need to exclude those out before you consider multifocal lens implantation. As we all know, following laser vision correction, there is a pre-existing dry eye syndrome, and some of them, especially after touch-up LASIKs, they end up with permanent dry eyes. So you need to treat these preoperatively before you consider doing your keratometry and IOL calculations. So as a routine, I start them on topical lubricants and then do my keratometry and topography and other calculations, because this does change the parameters. Quite a few of them have a pre-existing irregular astigmatism, and that makes it even more difficult because you're adding on to their problems. If they've had presbyopia procedures like conductive keratoplasty, which I've had the privilege of doing one patient on, they may have very high astigmatism even to start with. So you need to take that into account before you proceed further. Quite a few of them have pre-existing night vision problems, and if you don't choose the right kind of lens implant, you add on to their night vision problem to the extent that they have to stop driving at night time. So the main problem with IOL calculation is the change in the curvature or the ratio of the curvature of the cornea on the anterior versus the posterior surface. Our conventional keratometry instruments assume this to be normal, but as we all know, whether it is LASIK for myopia or hyperopic LASIK, this ratio changes. And because of that, you get completely wrong keratometry information, which, as you know, can affect your IOL calculations. It's always nice to have some information about their pre-LASIK refractive status, but as we all know, it's been 10 years, 15, 20 years when they had their LASIK done. Some of the centers have even closed down, so you don't have access to any information. Majority of the patients that come to me with this do not have any idea what their pre-LASIK status was, so you have to start afresh. In the beginning, when I started doing this, I used to spend a lot of time doing their keratometry readings and then converting them to what they should be using, Maloney formula, Shamas formula, and I had access to Pentacam as well, so I used to go online and do what we call as the best formula, which has been decided by Moorfield Hospital's ophthalmologist. But I'm not very good at mathematics, and these are some of the formulas. I'm not going to bore you with the details because it is just not required anymore now. We have access to online calculations. If you have prior history, you can have this clinical history, Feynman or corneal bypass formulas. When you know the manifest refraction, these are some of the formulas, of which modified Mascot formula I found to be the most accurate in my patients. And if you have no prior data, some of the modern instruments now have formulas incorporated into them, like IOL Master has Haigis L formula, which is fantastic. I have Aladdin Topcon available to me. I don't use IOL Master anymore, and I have access to Camillin-Calosi formula, which is thought to be very accurate. If you have Lenstar, again, you have an inbuilt Shamas formula. So you don't have to really go into all those details and waste your time doing all those complex mathematical calculations. This has made our life so very easy now. We have websites like on the ASCRS website or drhill.com, which are free resources. Remember, you have to use your proper A constants, which means you have to work out your own optimized A constants using your surgeon factor, and also use the proper refractive index, which is usually 1.335. This is one of the typical forms that we use. We put in all the details. It does everything for you. Basically, you can see that in the bottom half, you have a choice of different formulas based on what you have input into the online calculation form, and it tells you what to use. It tells you what the average IOL power is, and then you decide based on your experience which formula you want to use, or you just want to use the average IOL power. Similarly, for myopic, PRK or LASIK, you have a different formula. So don't use manual or SimCase. And you're dealing with hyperopic LASIK. The literature says that you should not use holiday formula, because with holiday formula, in hyperopic LASIK, we expect that the AC will be shallow, and that's not the case in about 20% patients, hence that affects your effective lens position. I've shifted over to Aladdin, and even if you do all this, sometimes you have surprises, so it's always better to use what we call as double K correction method, in which you even refine your IOL calculation techniques, and for that, you can go on this website called dr-hill.com, and you put in your data, and for every formula that you use, whether it's hyperopic LASIK or myopic LASIK, it gives you a correction factor which you need to apply to your lens power that you're going to use. Some people use Holiday IOL Consultant. It's a very expensive software program, but it's thought to be very good. As regards the technique, it's another form of refractive surgery. Choice of lens implant is very important. If you've done myopic LASIK, because you're creating more spherical aberration, it's better to use lenses like Tecnis multifocal. But because they add on to night vision problems, I've shifted on to Lentis M+, which is an aberration neutral lens. For hyperopic LASIK, I again use Lantis M Plus lens. Better to avoid CME, so it's always nice to give preoperative non-steroidals to avoid any CME and carry on with your lubricant drops even after surgery. Make sure that you also do, if you want to, LRIs or astigmatic keratotomy if there is a pre-existing astigmatism. Avoid your clear corneal incision at the flap, LASIK near the edge of the flap, because it is a nightmare if your corneal incision is close to the LASIK flap and you're doing stromal hydration. It just lifts the flap up. You never get a wound, watertight wound. Your CCC has to be very, very central and regular. As you know, some of these lenses, if they are slightly decentered, especially multifocals with refractive design like Tecnis, they can cause a huge problem with contrast sensitivity. They add on to your night vision problems, so it's very, very important. And that's why the importance of femtosecond. Of course, not all of us have access to femtosecond. And some of the problems that can cause dissatisfaction following multifocal and following LASIK is the DC-centered lenses and the posterior capsular opacification. Always tell the patients that they may have delayed recovery of vision, not to expect that on the second or third day they will have perfect vision. And of course, I'm going to emphasize again the use of the post-operative lubricant drops. I've had the occasion to do phaco with multifocals following radial keratotomy. I normally use Pentacam if I have access to. And here the important thing with the technique is try to stay away from the radial cuts. Use a scleral frown incision or limbal incision, because sometimes if you go and touch these incisions, they just open up and it's impossible to then proceed with surgery. Reduce your bottle height because these avoids gaping of the radial cuts. These patients typically again have post-operative instability as far as their vision or refraction is concerned, which can last up to even 6 months. Conductive keratoplasty used to be done a lot for presbyopia correction. I've had one patient in which I did bilateral multifocals. Problem here was the induced astigmatism and night vision problems. And there is nothing in the literature to tell you how to go about this, so I used modified Masquet formula, basically, which takes into account the pre-laser vision correction or pre-conductive keratoplasty spherical equivalent, and added this correction factor to my IOL master readings, and I ended up with a fairly good result. It is believed that you should not use SRKT formula. I don't know why, but it's been mentioned that we should not use it for this. And I also did a limbal relaxing incision in this patient. These are my results. Basically, this is last 1 calendar year. I've done 16 patients. And in 15 patients, I've been able to achieve 6/9 or better, and an 8 for near vision. Problem was with Tecnis multifocal lenses in which patients could not use computer. They did not have very good intermediate vision. So I've shifted wholly and exclusively to Lantis M Plus lens. I have no financial interest in this. There were 3-4 patients in which we had a few night vision problems like glare, halos, starburst, but they all resolved within 6 to 12 months, and none of my patients lost any best corrected distance visual acuity. Thank you for your attention.